I'm here today in Hays, Kansas at the library. It's a lovely library. And I'm with Mark, say your name?
Schaukowitch.
Schaukowitch, like the Shockers. I can remember that. Schaukowitch. Here, he's running for Kansas House District 110. And so we're going to have... We're actually recording this after the conversation because it was so interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. You should want to listen to all of it. I'm just trying to get the word out that there's everyday people running, and that if they can do it, you can do it, and there's a lot of help now. Because at the end of the day, I am also just an everyday person that sees a lot of real problems happening right here at our state house.
Oh, yeah.
That needs to be handled before we can tackle the federal at all.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on whether or not you see this as hierarchical or not, right? The tradition has always been you look at your local offices and you work your way up, kind of like leveling up in a video game, from the 80s. I'm not for sure that's the case anymore. I think that's the way parties and establishment figures would like it to be, but that's clearly not effective. And part of that's because, I think there's two major reasons, and I would have to do more research on this, but this is my suspicion. Part of this infrastructure we inherited from the 18th century, and so when we're talking
our entire political structure,
so if you want to talk about the federal structure, you're looking at a slaver's constitution, right? The Second Amendment's a really good example of that. The NRA's done a really good job of obscuring the narrative that gun rights were not individual rights; they were intended to put down slave rebellions, right? So when you get
well-regulated militia,
exactly,
they don't keep reading.
No.
I've been yelling about that my whole life.
Militias were not designed to check the government; they were extensions of the government to put down slave rebellions.
Wow.
So,
I learn something every time I do one of these interviews.
Yeah.
Usually, it's how much worse it is than I thought.
There you go. Yeah. Well, and so if you're thinking about this historically, right? We have the Civil War, slavery ends, then the Second Amendment should be inoperative, which is a very specific legal term, meaning that you have laws on the books, but they no longer work or are applied. And yet we still find ways of resurrecting the Second Amendment in weird ways.
I know we might be eating into question time, but
oh, that's fine. I've got plenty of time.
It's hard. Well, we only have 2 hours in here, but it's hard. I don't get time to talk to people about these things and my theories and stuff. Yeah. So, do you think that the Founding Fathers meant for it to be a living document that we have updated since then when they wrote it? I feel like they'd come back and be like, what are you people doing? Still running, you haven't changed anything since you've only added to it. You've changed none of the language or anything 250 years later. Are you stupid,
Unclear to me, partly because they're all English, right? And they had the Magna Carta, and that hadn't changed in hundreds of years. You're looking at these systems that they're trying to establish that are based on British common law. And
were they being reactionary to the time like people are now, or were they truly thinking hundreds of years ahead? Because our current leaders and stuff do not think that far ahead. So I would imagine that it would just make sense that the leaders back then are focused on what can we do now to get rid of our control by these people, but now what do we do to be the ones that control those people? That's what I feel like they did. The whole Revolutionary War, all that is we stopped as a citizen, as a country, being beholden to England or whatever, the British, but now we're beholden to the people.
Yeah, so I would prefer a more precise question, so let me break that down into three parts, right? The first one is there's a question of intent. What did the Founding Fathers intend to do? And I think they were looking for stability, right? So we had the Articles of Confederation before we had the Constitution, right? We don't get the Constitution until 1796. So they are trying to create stability as a result of that and negotiate in a way that satisfies basically the rich people at the time in order to create stability across 13 colonies. The second part to that question is they need some permanence. They don't know how far that permanence is going to go, though. And then the third question always comes back to slavery, right? Under what conditions can they secure their labor source for the capitalistic projects that they're ongoing. And I use capitalism there just to note that that is the economic system, and that particular economic system is exploiting Black life, right? And that encouraged people to view them as unhuman, subhuman, and they were, you know, and all the things that go along with chattel slavery that are truly awful. So I don't think they're thinking about things like, how do we create social habits? I don't think they're thinking about what makes a good citizen beyond family wealth, because I think they think virtue is inherited through wealth and will be passed down through wealth. I find them to be, and there's debates about this, right? So some people are looking at philosophers like Kant, other people are looking at various versions of Christianity. You got to remember that the American colonies are a result of the English Civil War in largely 1643. So you have all these new Christianities that emerged out of that as a challenge to the crown. The crown won. And so they can't live in England anymore, so they have to go elsewhere. So part of the colonial project is also a refugee project, and whether or not, you know, those refugees turn into invaders at a certain point to expand the crown's influence and whatnot. So there's all these major questions wrapped up into that, and there's these questions of defense. How do you get along with Native peoples? Do you get along with Native peoples? What is socially acceptable? What is not socially acceptable? How do you organize? How do you set boundaries and distances? And I don't think the Founding Fathers really are concerned with the long-term implications of all that. They are interested in how do we just stabilize what we've got. Partly because those are not questions they're thinking about as wealthy landowners. They are thinking about questions of how to preserve themselves, preserve the colonies, create relative stability, prevent slave rebellions, and then more broadly, prevent colony rebellions. How do we keep everything together?
It wasn't set up with worrying about a framework of human rights. So
absolutely.
that does put a different perspective on the Second Amendment when you're not looking at it framed as individual rights to guns. That I never thought of.
And the Second Amendment is not a question of individual rights, right? The language does not even think of it in terms of rights, right? We think of it as a right now because of Supreme Court cases that change the interpretation, particularly in the post-Reconstruction period. So if you're thinking about all the gun rights cases that came from about 1890 up until we get Heller, that's where you're seeing that language slowly become, okay, you have this individual humanistic right thing emerging, which they never would have thought of it that way, 200 years ago. They would have thought about this in terms of securing a labor source.
Another cattle or
exactly.
We're cows. We're sheep.
It's exactly like
we're
that.
Just cows and
Actually,
sheep.
I was talking to my buddy last
so
week, and he has a farm. He has 400 head worth of cattle or something, and this one cow had both been sick and always gets into all these fence lines and stuff, and it just got to the point where he took out a fence post and all this other stuff, and they just had to put him down. So they had to shoot the cow, it's the exact same thing, except with slavery, with human beings. It's black human beings. That's the way they thought of it. And so now what we've done is that's morphed, changed multiple times over history, and you can look at a lot of different books for this.
I'll just listen to smart people like you.
Well,
I've already got a bunch of books I have to read about other things that are my special interest. But everything you're saying is very fascinating. Do you have like a history degree, or are you just into
so This is a very good question. This is where you might want to start recording.
I'm pretty sure I'm recording. I want to
Okay,
check.
good.
I was getting real paranoid.
Just making sure.
We got it because that was all so good.
Yeah. My background is
what you just did was way better than any of my stupid questions. But this is one reason I love doing this is because I guarantee you there are people that don't think you are who I would be. Like I haven't said your name. They couldn't look you up. They were not expecting this to be what I was going out to rural Kansas.
No.
And they're out there, smart people that he's blowing my mind. Like I know what my saying was, but it was just too long to put on things. I know enough to know that I don't know enough, but I'm going to find out, right?
Yeah.
And I can't read all the books you've read and put all that knowledge in, but you are very good at condensing it down in a way that I know and can comprehend it, but it's still extremely intelligent. And I feel like it's like I try to say things you just said, but I just say them the way I say them, and I just want to be like, this guy gets it, you know? But you just, you just connected some things in my head that have always been like just a question I've had about, because I'm not like obviously that knowledgeable of the history of the Constitution. Like,
you think castle doctrine, which is the right of your individual home and the owners of that home to own a weapon and then maim people if they illegally enter, and then there's different things around that. Well, that was originally designed to keep slaves out of the home, you know, and then you can go back further in terms of self-defense and all that
racism and slavery.
Yeah, it does.
It all comes back to slavery. It's like the herpes of human atrocities.
Well, the best way to think about this is that there's these echoes that go on, right, throughout history. And with an echo, each time your sound bounces off of a wall, it changes or manipulates or morphs the sound. And so if you're thinking about this as a sound wave, you can think about all these things in the current way that they're happening as morphed sound waves. And so my background, I got my political science degree and my communication studies degree from KU. I did my master's at Syracuse in rhetoric and communication studies. And then I did a PhD.
Did you do debate?
I did do debate.
Oh, that's why you can talk like that.
Yeah. I did my PhD at University of South Carolina. I did not finish. I was ABD. But that was basically in rhetoric and critical theory. And my specialization was political theology. So if you really want to talk about
political theology, like religion and politics,
a little bit of both, right? So I think it's a double-sided coin. I think religion and institutional structures inform politics. I think the way in which religion engages in politics also informs our institutions and structures. So I think you have to take it as both sides.
And it's been like that since the start. That's the argument too.
You can't avoid it.
There are people there are people that so definitively say what the founding fathers meant or said as if they had talked to their ghosts in the night, you know? No, the founding fathers meant this. I'm like,
you don't get to do that with language, right? Language is a slippery thing, and it's going to change over time. Like LOL was not a thing; that is a new emergence.
I know. I say it out loud now. Sometimes.
Yeah, now we say
like
lol, right?
Lol.
I actually worked with this with a 19-year-old, and that's what she said. She's like, "Oh, lol," and I'm like,
"Yeah, they speak in that talk, and my kids do it. My daughter's 20. I have kids that are 24 to 29. And they still do it.
Yeah,
and instead of saying, "What do you mean?" they'll be like, "YDM." I have basically a degree in integrated marketing communications from Wichita State. I don't technically have the degree, so I don't want anybody to think I'm lying. I just needed to do a 5-hour language language class, like Spanish or something. And I tried. I didn't have the money. There was no way. I had kids. There's no way I was going to get through that class. But I've taken all the classes that matter. I could also have a degree from Hayes if I took just 18 classes of anything I wanted. So I've done the core work for a lot of things. But integrated, like communications in general, has been my study because turns out I'm autistic.
Okay.
And that's why I've my whole life been on a journey to try to figure out how to communicate with humans because I figured out really early that what I was doing was not effective.
Yes, Helen, you are so alien.
People were.
I say that very sarcastically.
No, I know. I feel like I make a joke about it.
Both as respectful, but also as this is clearly a very human activity, and
yes.
You are not distant from it.
I am not, but now I'm 48, and I've learned a lot, and I've studied humans. What I've been doing is basically studying Kansas, breaking down all the districts' profiles and looking at their demographics. And did you know that in most, like Kansas as a whole, right, has like a much larger portion of single parents than I thought?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But that 30% of those single parents on average are men?
Yeah.
I had no idea. And it's not like I'm saying that they need to somehow be more important than single moms, but I do feel like that is enough of the population that's being left out of the conversation about single parents in general and how to support. They have different support needs.
Oh, yes.
And they generally, I could imagine, since I didn't even know they exist, I mean, I hope they're just quieter. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot more. It's 3 times as much as I would have thought. A third of our, and so what that means to me is that there's a third of our children living in populations with a single parent that is probably not getting properly supported via all the things that they need. And then they're men, and you're not supposed to take care of your mental health or cry and tough it up, and so they're probably not reaching out. And so that's a lot. A third of our single parent households is a lot of kids.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of information that I like to dig out and look at in data and spreadsheets. I love numbers. I love data and spreadsheets, and I mean, I like statistics, but I don't get too deep into all that. Okay. I let the spreadsheets do the formulas for me.
That's pretty good, because my district's R plus 22, and we only have, out of roughly 20,000 voters, you have about 9,000 that vote.
That actually vote.
Vote. And out of all of those, maybe about 1,000 of them are actually registered as Democrats right now.
That's pretty good, though. 9,000. That's a pretty active district. From what I've seen, they're usually about 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty active voters. But are there a lot of unaffiliated?
No, surprisingly, and that's because of one reason.
So you have to win over Republican voters, or people that aren't registered,
or rhinos.
What are rhinos?
And
are those like the what some people would call, they say establishment Democrat, establishment Republican. They're pre-MAGA Republicans. Yeah.
Well, in this case, I would say Republican name only because they want to vote in primaries.
Is that what rhino means?
Yes, that is what rhino means. Republican name only.
I feel like I should have known that already.
And dino, Democrat name only, right?
This is the thing. I am a very intelligent person sometimes, but there are little things that I just kind of went with rhino. I thought it had something to do with the elephant.
No, just
it's
Republican
name
only. Yeah. And a lot of people in the area, so for a lot of reasons, I think politics, particularly out west of Salina, and it's not exclusive to our area, but there's a particular intensity out here for a historical reason. One is which a lot of slavers came through southeast, through southwest, and then up through western Kansas, and then eventually over into Oregon. Post-Civil War. From that, you get a libertarian-leaning strain, particularly out here, that has remained. And libertarianism, I mean, we can talk about that as an ideology. It's not particularly consistent, but when it is applied consistently, it has a number of drawbacks which end up preserving a lot of the social stereotypes of the 19th century, which is problematic.
I know there are things that libertarian beliefs that I think that I do agree with. That's the thing, is I'm unaffiliated. That doesn't mean that I don't want to get more Democrats running or just more people running. I don't know if you've heard of the United Kansas Party. I'm going to do a deep dive into them at some point, but it's pretty interesting. Aaron Esterbrook is kind of their founder, and he's running in 66.
The fusion voting.
Gotcha. Which fusion voting makes way more sense to me than having ranked choice voting, because it was hard. People here ain't going to be able to understand ranked choice voting.
Well,
it's complicated. me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it can be. Well, around here, you don't even get it right because your primary is typically your election, because everyone's registered Republican. Now, someone might not have the beliefs of the Republican Party, or they might not even care about the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But because there's never a Democrat running for a county position or whatever, and these are the positions that impact small communities the most,
Yep.
you need to have your voice. Otherwise, you can get someone in there who's pretty bad. So I'll
It's
give.
really hard to get them out once they're in.
Exactly. Because we all are way too close to one another in our small communities, there's good things to that. If I were to die tomorrow, my mom would be taken care of in terms of meals for probably the rest of her life. Having said that, though, you also have, people who get bored. And sometimes they want to get into your business a little bit too much. So maintaining healthy boundaries in small communities is really, really,
That
really
is hard.
to do.
I grew up. Did you grow up here? I grew up in Wichita. And Wichita, everybody knows everybody. Everybody I know knows somebody else I know. It's so incestuous. And because I had a friend whose daughter died, right? And then I went to, and this was a really close friend I hung out with all the time. And then at her daughter's memorial, there were so many people I knew from so many different circles.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, I know her. And so everybody I know knows somebody else I know. And then everybody is all up in everybody's business and everybody knows everything. So I can only imagine what it's like to even condense down.
And
But did you grow up here?
Partly. So my family is originally from Plainville on my mom's side. My mom is a Como. Chuck Como's her younger brother. She
Chuck
has
Como?
yes. So we're in Hayes right now, and a lot of our downtown area he designed, helped raise funding for.
All I can think of is New York when I hear Cuomo.
Gellas, for example, when I was in high school, I helped gut. Along with several other buildings down here.
Yeah.
That was 20, going on 25
I would say
years
that's
ago
roots.
now. Yeah.
I would say that's roots.
My grandmother was here. My Uncle Roger's here. My Uncle Ron's here. My Uncle Perry's up in Kansas City. My
Is
Uncle
Uncle
David
Ron the
passed
fun
away.
one?
No, my Uncle Ron is
Uncle Ron
was a
sounds
Catholic
like,
priest.
Uncle Ron
actually.
sounds like a fun uncle.
Yeah.
Like the one that let you ride his motorcycle without a helmet or something.
He lived in Canada for 40 plus years, and he worked with refugee children. So
Oh, that's good.
primarily
That's
got
fun.
them. Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
It's positive, I would say.
Yeah.
More than fun, but that's way better than a fun uncle.
Yeah. He was a teacher for 40 plus years and worked with refugees.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you have roots here, and
Yeah. My mom moved back after
that's
she
really
retired.
important in these areas.
Yeah, she was a school nurse for 25 years in Olathe. Primarily grew up there. I went to Prince of Peace and St. Thomas Aquinas, and then I went to KU and all that. And been up and down the East Coast a lot. My dad lived mostly in D.C. My parents were divorced, and got closer to him later in life. He passed away in 2015.
Was he involved in
sarcoma.
politics, or just happened to be in D.C.?
Just happened to be in D.C. His wife, she was the vice president of, I believe it was Blue Cross Blue Shield in Maryland, and then he worked for a patent attorney for a firm that dealt with corporate clients.
Yeah.
So the patent office is right there in D.C., so it makes sense for him to be there.
Yeah. I have a friend. That friend I was talking about earlier. She's had to go through the whole patent process. It's a thing.
It is a thing.
They're like, we had to move this line a quarter of an inch. You have to re-sign all these papers and we have to refile them. And it's like tedious.
Yes.
But so you grew up here, or you've been here a long time.
Oh yeah.
And
I've lived here since
people,
2020.
there's a lot of people that are going to think they don't want to throw their vote away.
Right.
Which I think voting for the wrong candidate is actually a worse way to throw your vote away. I don't know your incumbent. I'm really looked into. I'm going to be doing the campaign finances of all of these and stuff like that.
So in my case, Ken Rogers is not running for the seat again. He's running for Secretary of State.
That's right. You don't have an opponent.
And so right now I don't have an opponent, which I think is great.
Opponent.
But
I imagine you'll get one.
I imagine I'll get one. So I'm working on this.
That's what I said in the video
early.
on the way here.
Yeah.
I imagine you'll get one.
I imagine I'll get one. So.
Yeah, I can't see. We got till June. We still have 3.5 months. And there were some people that were going to run in Sedgwick County, Wichita area, I have a friend that's a precinct committee person, and she's like raring to go, like start campaigning. And they said, well, they won't officially run and announce until day of. That way people have less time to get dirt on them. And so I'm assuming that's something that a lot of these people factor in. And I'm like, what dirt? How about you just don't have no dirt? But so there are people that wait until June 1st for strategic reasons that are running. But there's always whispers. And there's always, I know a couple people that are running as Democrats for Kansas House that haven't announced yet, but I know they're running, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so there's somebody. Maybe I'll hear a whisper. Those are the kind of things I like to find out. I'm like, ooh, I got the scoop.
Well, and to your earlier point about potentially having a candidate not wanting to throw your vote away, I feel like that's what our region has been doing. Mm-hmm. So I think there's 2 points I need to make about this. The first one is I moved back in 2020, right before the pandemic. It was 2 weeks before the pandemic happened. I thought I was going to be here, staying at my mom's house. I was just going to finish my dissertation. I'd get an academic job somewhere. I started working on that, got really isolated and depressed, basically, and dissertation was not coming along. Simultaneously, we had local problems. We had a family friend who was invited in and to help revitalize our nursing home, and he needed a technical writer. And I said, okay, I will do that. And so I started working for him, put the dissertation aside, and I realized that throughout the region, as we were working on economic development stuff, not just nursing home stuff, but like how to create supply chains for that nursing home and all that there's a real need for grant writers, technical writers, that there's a lot of potential out this way that wasn't being unlocked. Mm-hmm. That also turned into a little bit of local activism because I started attending Ellis County Democrat events. Mm-hmm. And I had been an independent for the most part because I'm more on the Bernie Sanders side of the party than I am on the other establishment side of the party, the neoliberal side of the party, which we can talk about neoliberalism.
No, I get it.
At a different point, but long story short,
I understand. I know what you're saying.
I stayed back and I was doing that work for a while, and we have a very independent streak out here, I would say, but there's also kind of a lack of leadership, wanting to follow the rules, investigate, and do the rules in order to acquire funding for various projects that need to be done. And
I've done a little bit of grant writing, and
it's tough,
especially when you're asked. I mean, I just wrote for a grant that the city was doing for some project. But when you're talking about writing grants to get money from the federal government, it's almost like the patent.
Yes,
you have to have every I dotted, every T crossed, everything exactly to their parameters, or they will just be like, "This is 11-point font." Or whatever, you know what I mean? They will just toss it out if you're not exactly to the parameters. And so there's a lot of attention to detail that's required in that. Yeah. And bill writing. It would translate into bill writing.
Oh, yeah. All the above. I would love to do some of that stuff, mostly just because some of our laws are really archaic. And I've done some of that stuff for the party, too. So as I've participated, there's a bylaws change that I'm proposing.
When did you move back here?
2020. 2021.
So you weren't here in 2016 when all that went down with Bernie. No. See, I was in Wichita, so I got a Bernie story. I was in
South Carolina.
I got a Bernie story. I don't know what it was like out there, but here, Bernie activated me in a way. Like, I voted, I kind of paid attention. I mean, compared to most people, I was an informed voter because I could at least knew who our Secretary of State was for the state. Right. That's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
And so, but Bernie really got me. I walked in a parade float by choice.
Right.
That's not something I normally do. I wore a shirt. I felt like I could loudly and proudly display my support for him because I could defend that decision. And no, he woke me up and gave me hope in a way. And then at the time, I was really focused on precinct committee people and how the parties are missing that foundation. So I found out, this is how uninformed it was. I didn't even know precinct committee people were a thing or what they do. Yeah. And then somebody at some meeting I was at was just like, I overheard a conversation two guys were having about it. I was like, precinct committee people, what's that? And then I started looking into it. I was like, oh, they have 75 instead of 900 making decisions. Right. And so that led me down that. And then it was just, everybody was energized. There were people that were energized, and we were excited to make change. And at the poll that I went to for the primary, there were just a line in Wichita, Kansas, of young white Republicans switching parties
Yeah.
to vote for Bernie. And I was like, this is it. This is it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then the establishment that was just there in Sedgwick County,
Right.
that are still lurking around. It's
absolutely.
much better now 10 years later, though.
Yeah.
But I've watched it develop.
Sure, sure.
And so it takes Kansas 10 years to get caught up, right?
I've heard this in various ways. Or we're 10 years ahead of the curve.
But I feel like, the establishment came in. They were just so pissed. They wanted Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
They were so mad that the side of Bernie people, and we were all happy and cheering, and they were a bunch of grumpy old people over there like, right? It was so clear that this was the precipice of change, and then they did whatever they do,
Right.
and they took it. And I was just like, if that is the turnout that he had here in Wichita, Kansas, how did he lose? And so it's like, I obviously don't have the answers to that, but
well,
I feel like he was robbed, man.
I was living in South Carolina at the time, and basically the establishment there felt that he wouldn't win nationally against any candidate. Now, I think he would have easily beaten Trump. There's lots of evidence to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie...
he had the young people.
The problem is the Democratic Party is a centrist party, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is not at the national level.
Yes.
You're going to have variances in different states and
Southern
whatnot.
Democrats.
Yes.
Yes.
And you're going to find that, and I think this bears out in Kansas wide, that then the model voter that they want to appeal to is ultimately Republicans. Well, Republicans don't want to have anything to do with us. Like those diehard MAGA people, they don't care. My campaign has been about building rural power. I'm partly pulling from Graham Plattner on this one because I think his campaign's brilliant, and I've been following that very closely, but also because the last time I talked to Ken Rajas, he pulled me aside because I was asking, why did you vote for that Supreme Court amendment? Basically, you're going to allow us to have our court bought by rich, powerful people. You're going to have what happened in Wisconsin. What the hell, man?
Yes.
And he said, well, I have to trade my votes. And I'm like, what the hell do you mean? He's like, well, if I want to get something done for our district, I have to trade off some of my votes. And this is one I had to strategically do in order to get this other thing. I said, that's bullshit.
You'll scratch my back, I'll scratch yours later.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's bullshit.
That's not how it should work.
Yeah, that's not how it should work. And if someone's holding you hostage and the welfare of our district hostage, then you should either A, bring that to the public and rally against them, or B, switch parties. Or ideally both. Find the means of leverage. But if you're not willing to do that, then fine, I'll do your job for you.
You shouldn't be in the office.
You shouldn't be in the office.
Yeah,
exactly.
no, you could be out here being an informed voter, but you don't need to be in that office if you're not going to do the work.
Yeah, and if you're going to trade off our ability,
it's like a game. It's like a card game.
Yeah, to have a professional Supreme Court.
It's like playing Go Fish.
That meets the standards for even if I disagree with them, I can agree that at least people there are qualified.
I've done the research. I have a lot of things I've researched and have never put into the world yet on it. Mostly because I'm waiting till it gets closer to the election.
Yeah.
Because if I if I say it now, they're not going to pay attention. But because I see a lot of people talking about November elections. And so I whenever I get the opportunity, I'm like, actually in August, you really need to go vote. And there's misinformation out there about.
Yeah.
There was a lady on TikTok talking specifically about Kansas, saying that unaffiliated voters couldn't vote in August. Probably a bot. Unaffiliated voters couldn't vote in August. That she works as a precinct person, and it's only if you're a party to vote in a primary. I said, not if there is a ballot measure like this. Everybody gets to vote on it. And then I checked with the election people, and they said, yes, everybody needs to vote in August, and they need to vote no, right?
Vote, in my opinion, I think in August and in November, because we have two amendments. So
what's in November?
The November, so in August, that's the amendment about who gets to vote. And basically, if you've changed your name or gotten married, which is like half of Kansas, that is the amendment that comes up in August. And that will disqualify you unless you go through a bunch of hoops. to vote in November.
So we're getting to vote
and
on
then
it.
in November, that is the Supreme Court amendment.
Yes.
So basically, it'll allow for direct election of Supreme Court justices, lowers the standards for which you qualify to become a Supreme Court justice, and then allows you to raise money and basically allows campaign, all of that.
And the process they have now is great. Basically, all the lawyers get together and they put a list together of people that they feel are qualified. All the lawyers in Kansas.
Correct.
If you're a bar certified or whatever, you can vote on, make this list. And then they send that to whoever the governor is, and that governor picks however many.
Correct.
And then they pick from this list of qualified people all over the state. I don't know how active they all are, but the opportunity's there. And I think that I mean, there might be a better way to do it, but changing it to an elected thing where Elon Musk can come in here and try to buy our Supreme Court justices.
Or just the Kochs, right? Because
they
currently own the Republican Party, right? This is a big issue for me right now because, so farmers in the area in my district, so my district is House District 110. It's comprised of Phillips County, Norton County, Graham County, Rooks County, and everything in Ellis County minus Hayes and Victoria. So we have a lot of farmland in that area.
Yeah.
We have a lot of farmers in that area. You're either getting most of your feed and fertilizer basically from Coke. Coke gets to set the price. Yeah, just about everything. That or a subsidiary or something they're invested in.
It all goes back to them.
It all goes back to them. When they got rid of that fertilizer plant that was publicly owned in Iowa, who bought it? It was Coke. And that's because it was bringing competition and creating a reason to lower the price for various things. And it was doing well. Coke came in and said, hey, we want to take this off your hands, create a big campaign out of it. And basically, Iowa was like, we don't want this publicly subsidized anymore. Well, fine, we'll put it up for sale. Who bought it? Coke. That's a huge problem because then you have a monopoly.
I think in those situations, do you think that they, before they make a decision to sell, that Coke's already in their ear saying, "Oh,
absolutely,
buy it"? Yeah,
110%.
I think that is
110%.
There's this big plot of land near Wichita.
Yeah,
it's a park right now and it's protected. Well, Estes is trying to get it unprotected. It was owned by the city, then the city gave it to the county to pay back a debt, and then Estes is at the federal level trying to get it unprotected, or the state level trying to get it unprotected. And I was like, they would not do all that if there wasn't a buyer already that wants it. You know,
someone wants to expand or do something.
I just hope it's not an AI data center. I hope they're not that stupid.
Well, and those require a lot of water. So
we
have a huge problem with water.
Wichita has the largest system of water under its control in the state. It goes way out because they've been touting it as like, we have to raise our rates. Look how much we have to take care of. But that made me start thinking. I was like, and it's on the other side of Bel Air, so it's not like right up. They wouldn't be that stupid.
The question is how do you manage all that, right?
Yeah.
And for Wichita, the way I look at it is how fast do you want to expand and what resources do you have to continue expansion? Right now, we have this mindset of infinite growth and growth no matter what. That's not sustainable. Like, just from a resource perspective, that's not sustainable. I'm really impressed with, for example, Kansas Forest Service, right? I went on a tour with them a few months back because I was thinking about being a candidate. My buddy had just become, he works at the bar with me, just taken up a job there as a firefighter and trainer. And basically, I was like, okay, I want to learn more about this. Maybe this is something I could do, or maybe this is something that I need to know. So he's like, oh yeah, come to these legislative briefings. We toured the whole area. We had several years prior, we had a major fire in the area. They showed where it started, where it spread, all the different kinds of trees and grasslands and stuff, and how they change during all the seasons and what makes them more fire prone and what doesn't, how to insulate against fire, and all this really, really cool stuff. And then I realized you have to manage all that along with all of our other resources, right? So you have to ask yourself when you're living out here, at least at your city and county levels, one, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? And then two, what resources do you have to meet that life? And if you can't answer both those questions, and you can't be a good steward of the land around you.
Yeah.
In Topeka, our biggest problem is that we have some people asking those questions and operating those things in good faith, but those people get drowned out very quickly by your Estises or by your people who just want development for the sake of development. I am not okay with this.
Or maybe they're getting financial kickbacks.
Yeah, whatever it is, right? And it trades off with this district at the end of the day.
Right? Things in my head about the leadership of the parties.
So parties, I think, are kind of...
You kind of have to pick one out here.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to explain to some people on TikTok the other day that don't really understand what it's like in Kansas.
So the Kansas Democratic Party has had a lot of problems since about 2015. I don't know the full story behind all of that, but I know there was
past the county level.
Yeah, I know there was a democracy fest, and a lot of internal things erupted, and it was nuts.
It feels like the counties are a lot on their own to me.
They are.
To build their own infrastructure.
So I became the county chair for Rooks County, roughly 2022, 2023, something like that. And
you were the what?
The county chair.
County chair for
Rooks County.
Is that like the second in command of the?
That's
the
the
vice
chair.
president or the president.
President
in Sanford County, they call it
chair.
president, vice president.
Yeah.
The chair.
Yeah, the chair. So I was the chair, and we have about 20 people that show up on various things, and we'll work on projects and stuff. But one, people are scared. If you are an out and proud Democrat, you are very likely to be ridiculed. You're very likely to be isolated even more than you already are in rural spaces. And then the third problem is your message. It's almost like messaging against a rock. Like your sound just bounces right off of it, and it doesn't matter. So we've had to take a different tact. And so we had to start having community conversations. We started doing things in a nonpartisan manner. We started coming together as a team and thinking of, okay, what's all the things that we can do? And then going for nonpartisan positions, not as Democrats, but as saying, okay, we're coming in, we know what the rules are, we're going to get these projects done to better the community, that it's for us, so that as a community, we don't have to worry about these things the way we've been worrying about them.
You know, that is something that marginalized groups have done.
Yeah.
You know, the like African American community, or they have built systems that are outside of the system because the system is not for them, right? And so I think that it's, you know, something that everybody should be doing, you know. And
I want to shout out to two organizations real fast. The first one is Rural Organizing. You can check them out at ruralorganizing.org. The second one is the Rural Defenders Union, which was a project of the Rural Organizing. So I found Rural Organizing online one day, and it just turned out that Nick Lewandowski, who happens to be a good friend of mine, was on their board. And he's the executive director of the Kansas Farmers Union. And so I started paying attention. Afton Bain, who just ran for Congress in Tennessee, was their organizing director at that point in time. And she was running her campaign too. So she was teaching us all how to organize and do stuff in rural while running a campaign for the Tennessee State House. Afton went on. She now, I believe, works with their PAC, and she just ran for Congress. She came in an R. I want to say it was like an R+30 district within 1.8 points of winning in a special election.
Oh yeah.
Like, she did incredible work.
Here?
This was in Tennessee.
In Tennessee.
So these are the people I was getting on Zoom calls with and being like, okay, how do I organize? How do we do things? As a result of that, I started working with some older people in the Democratic Party, and they were like, okay, how do we organize some of our rural counties? Well, Jim Swim and I got together and we organized Republic County. It was like, oh, this is an amazing feeling. I'm going to organize more counties. I started cold calling people. After getting some lists to some other random people, we organized Smith County. Then I just started canvassing randomly one day in Norton. I organized Norton County. I've been doing something similar in Phillips.
And when you
and
say
in Grand
organize,
County.
you mean igniting them, bringing them together,
creating county parties,
and getting the
local
movement
county
of
parties.
building strong county parties in places other than Olathe and Wichita. Wichita's isn't very strong. It's building though. They're doing a lot better. There's a lot more going on than we know is going on.
Well,
they have a whole committee.
yeah,
That's the meeting I was in, was a whole committee. Of
but urban's different, right? Because you have a population and you don't have the same
rules.
social rules that we have around here.
It's so much
And
different.
our biggest problem, I think, out here is that we don't have any power. Our vote is taken for granted. You elect a Republican. I think, no offense to Troy, but Troy Waymaster represents the House District 109 right next door.
Yeah.
And Troy is a Republican. He was a Democrat, but he switched party affiliations when he started running for the legislature. Now, all credit to Troy. He does get us money back here. He works with Northwest Development and planning quite a bit, and local communities, and all the good things that one should do. But the problem is that the Speaker of the House is still Dan Hawkins. The President of the Senate is still Ty Masterson. And they don't give a shit about us out here. In fact, so they feel like basically they have to scrap for what little scraps they will give us,
Right.
as opposed to doing these bigger projects. And the reason I know this, I mean, Dan Hawkins has told this to my face. I was making a big Medicaid expansion push out here, and I worked with several various organizations. And this was completely nonpartisan, I might add. But I worked with my friends, some of whom are Democrats, some of whom just work in hospitals.
Yeah.
We had one of our doctors explain to our community how big Medicaid expansion would be for their hospital. Broke it down, all the numbers, everything. It was our most popular public speaker series that we had done locally. Then we also brought in the Alliance for a Healthy Kansas. And we said, here's what this would do for our community. Here's more numbers. This backs us up. Here's what the differences are between Dan Hawkins' numbers and our numbers. Then we had one family who's very conservative call up Dan Hawkins and basically said, sure, I'll bring Americans for Prosperity out here. Had 200 people show up. We might have only had 20 or 30 local people actually in the building, but he had 200 people from Americans for Prosperity or affiliated, not from the region, show up in our township hall, and then give us incorrect numbers, which were not mathematically possible on Medicaid expansion.
So they don't just spread information online. They're going out to rural areas to spread it live in person.
And they made Ken show up, because his boss basically is there, and he's got to kowtow to that guy. And it's like, no, if you can't work with me and do things that are going to benefit my community and my area, then you're not representing our area. If I have to kowtow to you, no.
Yeah.
So that's one reason why I'm running as a Democrat. The other reason that I'm aside from all the national stuff that's going on.
So Ken is the House District person that's not running.
Correct.
You call him by his first name. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I don't mind, everyone's
You don't
related
call him.
somehow. He's adopted, but somehow I was related to someone on his mom's side, like 5 times removed. So I didn't know this person, but my mom knew this person. They met at a funeral, and then when he shows up at legislative coffees, we exchange pleasantries
it's
and
just
stuff.
like
I have nothing against him.
People
it's
have
just,
this.
I vehemently disagree with. I have to be a member of this party to get elected, and because I'm a member of that party, I can't get my area leverage.
Yeah.
If it's winner takes all, and as a result, you're not doing the things that are for the common good and supporting public things. If I'm talking about my roads, my biggest problem in my county is that our county can never find money. Yes, we've got oil revenue. Yes, we've got property taxes, but our jobs and our wages are not keeping up with property taxes.
Yeah.
So as a result, and this is true in Graham County, even more so in Graham County, if they lose their hospital, I think that county is going to be completely unincorporated. But that's another thing. Norton, Phillips County, their hospitals are in various conditions and stuff. Those are all public goods. We've got to be able to give money for. We've got to raise money for. We've got to be able to build things for, right? If your infrastructure is getting outdated, you should be able to easily go to get a community facilities
I
loan.
think that the government entities need to, there's 5 pillar things they should be worried about, and infrastructure, roads, transportation, all that stuff. Our health care, making sure we have health care and we're healthy, making sure we're fed.
Yes.
I forgot what the other 2 are, but education, that we're educated. I can't remember what the 5th one. protection, not protection,
yeah.
but I had a better word than protection, but yeah,
Well,
public safety,
things
firefighters, things like that, not just police or whatever. But and so those are the only. Those to me are like, if it doesn't have anything to do with those 5 things, and it doesn't have anything to do with maybe protecting people's rights if somebody's trying to impede on them, yet they shouldn't even be worried about it and to beat that.
Well, the way I look at it is
City Hall.
I think infrastructure is too narrow of thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
We need to think about this as a community project, right? Because when we're talking about your city hall or scaling up to your county or even scaling up to Topeka, you have to have access to things like public roads, right? Or access to water, or all those things in order to make life livable, right? But in order to have access and make all those things affordable in the first place, you have to have a certain amount of population, right? The problem with our rural areas is that we're losing population. They're either going to urban areas in the state or they're leaving the state completely.
Is there there's also a lot of elderly people in rural areas.
Oh, that is
passing away.
That is the only growing population in northwest Kansas, and that's predicted all the way out until at least 2060.
So that's where all the
Wichita
the
State
old people are going?
Yeah, so now, we don't have the ability to take care of them, right? So the project I was working on is our local nursing home, Redbud, and I was working with Action Pact there. They originate out of Manhattan. They created the household model, along with various other groups and whatnot. The household model is an incredible model of nursing home because it no longer assumes age as a disease, and it's no longer based on an ER. It's based on a house.
They have some of those for like their homes.
Yeah, Meadowlark is
in Wichita.
Yeah,
they're great.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And so our plan was to put that out here, a combination of impossible burdens, right? Like our community has to raise a lot of money now in order to qualify for the community facility loan. Now, part of that is because our USDA rep on the community facility loan passed away, and we had to repeat some of the process. Part of that is because Christy Davis is no longer our USDA oversight person for the state. She was amazing and incredible to work with when she was there.
I've learned a little bit about her, and I follow her on Facebook and stuff.
She's been a dear friend of my family.
I asked her to do an interview, but why? She don't need me.
she was a dear friend of my family for at least 20 years prior to me even working on this. I've known her. So
she understands rural. That's the thing. She understands
rural
more than anybody. Yeah.
Anybody else. And
she's been to all of them.
Yes. Yeah. Not just that, but she's worked in all of them. Like she's gotten every county in the state money.
This is how I ended up interested in rural people. Part of what led me to do Kansas Helen was that looking at the massive amount. We're talking about all of Western Kansas is rural, and then there's nothing in Colorado on the other side. So it's such a large portion of our state, and it has such different unique needs. Than Wichita or Olathe or whatever. There's so many different unique needs that they have, and I don't feel that it's definitely not being met. And I've talked to rural people online trying to get questions because I wanted to try to get as many perspectives as possible. And I don't really want to go into the MAGA Facebook groups. So I kind of joined like little town Abilene groups and stuff. And it was just like, if you could ask a candidate a question, what would it be? And this lady said, well, ask them who's going to clean up my field from all the fiberglass from the wind turbines. And I was like, what? And so I looked it up, and I was like, oh my gosh, if they're not properly maintained, if no one's making sure the companies properly maintain them, they are putting bits of fiberglass all over, and then they don't take them down. They just leave them up there till they fall apart. And so it is a real problem that just gets shut down in the urban or cities by, you just hate the wind energy, but there actually is a problem that needs fixed that no one's listening to them.
Well, and that goes to the fact that we're not getting represented in the ways that we should be, right? We have to do these trade-offs. Well, there's a big energy company, and it doesn't matter if it's green energy or not. Obviously, I prefer green energy. I think that's the way of the future. I don't think that coal or legacy kinds of power are going to be useful.
The kid in Manhattan yesterday, Noah, he's all about, he's all about nuclear energy, and I don't know enough about any of it to be like, no.
My dad, when he was alive, he's really interested in these Gen 4 and Gen 5 reactors and these modular reactors. I'm not an engineer. He was. So I can't speak to that. What I can say is for everything has trade-offs. And we do not approach things as though there are trade-offs, and we got to figure out what are acceptable trade-offs and learn how to have that conversation again. The biggest problem that I think we have as a set of communities is that we like to pound our chests and say, oh, we're so conservative. Well, what are we conserving? If we're not rebuilding our roads or rebuilding our hospitals or rebuilding our nursing homes, we're certainly not conserving our small towns, because all those things create jobs. It takes people, those are the things that keep people in a community because they have quick access to the resources that they need. That it's also the things that keeps our knowledge and our local history and our local culture there.
Because you lose kids so much in the rural areas.
Think about your school.
They get out.
They immediately get out. And then people start treating your school as something that's unnecessary, right? Or it's just babysitting throughout the day while you go and work your ass off. For wages at the exact same job that you could probably have in Wichita that's unionized, and make more and have better benefits and have time off.
Yeah, I was just looking at your profile of like the racial breakdown compared, because I have like the average of the percentages of yours, and then Kansas is over here. You guys are way higher on. What I would say when I do your profile is that you're not very diverse.
No.
And then you do have a higher population of older people. Compared to the state. But these are the things I look at when I'm trying to, it's like, if you don't have, there's one district that like, they have so many, it's mainly married couples with children. And so you got to make sure your constituents are mostly family. They have completely different needs than elderly or rural or whatever. And
well, if another way of thinking about this is if you look at the economic breakdown of basically kind of who has oil and who doesn't, who has resources and is producing and who doesn't. The people who have the greatest amount of revenue in my county turns out to be like 5 families, right? And then everybody else works for them for the most part. Now, that's neither good nor bad. I'm not trying to highlight that as a good thing, but it does mean those 5 families really have the resources to take care of their parents and their grandparents, whereas everyone else really doesn't.
So they're not thinking about it.
Right, and it's not to say that those 5 families aren't thinking about it, but that's going to be much less of a concern for them than it is for someone like me.
I think a lot of times people that are just out of touch because they've always had money, and it's not even that they're evil or nefarious. There are definitely evil rich people, but I think that they just don't think about those things because they've never had to think about it. None of their circle talks about it. No one in their family knows that. So they just... it's not that they're like evil trying to hurt poor people. They aren't even thinking about poor people. They aren't even thinking about
our system. So this is my Bernie rant, right? Our system kind of encourages a kind of neo-feudalization, which is you get to be the top person in your area, and our economic system wants to consolidate that. So eventually it'll whittle down to 2 or 3 top people, and that will be it. Our problem with doing that way is that that's basically hoarding resources. You're not per se responsible for that as an individual. You're incentivized by all of our laws, state and federal, to kind of do that, right? But assuming that is moral, basically you're creating poverty, and you're creating the conditions to erode your communities. So you can be something like, there's a family out of, I think it's Allen County, that's completely revitalizing Humboldt, and they're turning all their millions back into that community and revitalizing buildings. They're doing community festivals. They're helping their employees. They're giving them free memberships to the gym. They're making sure they have health insurance and all that stuff. I think all that is awesome. That's what you could do. But that's also a sign that you recognized a need in your community, and that other communities also probably have that need. And those other communities, you're not wealthy enough as individuals to help those other communities. You have to have something that redistributes wealth in such a way, and money and power and whatever that is, in such a way that everyone's needs are being served,
Yes.
right? And maybe I get that from Catholic social justice teaching.
I get it from
raised
Maslow's
Catholic,
hierarchy of needs.
but yeah.
That always comes back to that. If we don't have this,
Yeah.
we can't get.
I have neighbors who are working 2 and 3 jobs. They had better jobs at one point in time, but their companies collapsed during COVID or one thing or another.
That's the thing too. Is
It's expensive to move and get another job.
They're
It's-
still recovering from things like that out here
Yeah.
in a way that the urban districts are not.
Yes. Absolutely.
That's another thing I've seen is that the hit, hit that there are so many small. Basically, COVID took out a lot of little towns.
Yeah.
Either because they lost too many
Yeah.
people that died,
Yeah.
or they just infrastructurally, financially collapsed,
Right.
and so
And
they
it
went
created brain drain
unincorporated.
too. It went brain drain
People
too
left.
because not just did people left, but the people that have the technical skills to do some of this stuff also left. And then you have to hire a consultant to do it for you because your city offices don't know or one thing or another. I'll give you a really good example locally. We hadn't done a low to moderate income study, which is the key metric to qualify for CDBG grants. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, those are community block development grants. That is a chunk of money that's given to the state every year, and then the state distributes to qualified people.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you need to have a low to moderate income study in order to qualify. And basically, if you meet 51% low to moderate income in your community, then you qualify for a grant on whatever project you want to do, and there's a whole list of them on the Kansas Department of Commerce website. Well, we've been complaining about whether or not our census numbers would show that. Well, our census numbers have always been wrong out here. They've been wrong for 20 plus years because basically the last 2-3 times people have done census work and then the work in between, they haven't done it. They've used an algorithm or a formula to extrapolate. And
I know that when I
doesn't
did
work
the
well in rural
census,
communities.
no, I
It
lived
just
out in
doesn't.
Halstead,
Yeah.
and when I did the census, it was really hard for them to find people willing to go out into the country and do it. And I loved it. I was like,
Yeah.
sign me up. I got mileage.
Yeah.
I really didn't have to talk to that many people.
Yeah.
And I just got to drive through the country and
Well,
say hi
and
to
that's your
cows.
problem right there.
And so
you don't talk to that many people.
Yeah.
And so our numbers were always wrong.
people don't
so
answer their doors out there.
so you got to do an LMI to correct it. We used to regularly get CDBG, then we had a change in administration. That administration just didn't want to do the work. Well, no one was there to hold them accountable. Then when we started making a stink about it, we were like, okay, let's get this done. We got it done. And then after we got it done, the Trump administration changed the rules on the Commerce Department. So now we don't have, the Commerce Department can't accept our LMI because it wasn't done right. Well, we didn't know that this change was going to happen because you did that after we had completed the LMI. And you said you were going to take it because under the old rules, it was fine.
Yeah.
Well, instead of blaming the right source, which is the Trump administration, now they're blaming us. And it's like, no. That's a cycle of blame that you get into. And then people, cause a brouhaha because you spent valuable resources getting that thing done, talking to the consultant. That shouldn't be a problem. We don't need these means testing and all this other stuff in order to be able to access our tax dollars, to be able to improve our communities and do the basic work that a city or county should be doing. Yeah.
A lot of these needs, you just drive through your town, you see the need.
Yeah.
Why do I need to write a
It should be visual.
30-page document?
And
Look around.
I want to give a lot of praise to the Northwest Innovation Center right now. They're doing some wonderful stuff in housing. I understand that there's a new loan program coming out for renovating a house. And then there's... they've had a housing program for new home buyers for quite some time, and I think all that's great. They've been doing some work on MIH with developers and stuff like that, some moderate income housing, and grants and stuff like that. Which
it's like affordable housing, a different name.
No, it's designed to be
in the middle.
In the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
For rural communities and at cost, which is really, really hard because getting a middle house right now is about $350,000, but the jobs around here don't support that.
And you'd have to drive an hour.
Exactly. So the question is how do you incentivize developers to build a house but sell it lower than what you put into it? Well, the MIH can help with that.
Yeah.
And then there are tax credits and all these other things that you can do to create incentives. Well, for me, I want to know why we're not like intensifying that, right? Like we're saying, oh, we don't have the money for it. If the government's job is to help you provide, housing, incentivize construction, all that, and it's got billions of dollars in its rainy day fund or whatever, there's one of two problems. Either you have a revenue problem where you're not generating enough revenue. That does not necessarily mean revenue has to come from taxes, I want to highlight, because that's another thing I want to talk to you about. The second thing is it means that we're putting money towards the wrong things.
Yeah, it's not a money problem; it's a priority problem.
It's a priority problem.
Yes,
and I think it's both, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, we're not worthwhile, but a billionaire's football stadium that's going to price most of the people out is.
It's the same thing all the way down to the city level in cities. Yeah. Why do I care if they build a new baseball stadium? I can't afford to go to the new museum or whatever.
Exactly.
I can't even afford to go to the zoo.
And that should be a public thing, right? Those are the things that should both be public and that should be affordable. Right, housing should be affordable.
Yes, we need housing.
Yeah, you have to
need a football stadium.
Who's going to move out? So my mom was recently renovating a 109-year-old house. It had excellent bones.
Yeah.
But prices went up during construction. So we're kind of questioning whether or not we're going to be able to finish it right now. But it's going to be a gorgeous home. It's going to be basically brand new. You have to find a very specific buyer for something like that now at what it's going to cost.
Yeah, I really want to move out into a rural area. I want to be away from people. I want to have some land. I want to little animals in a little room. But it comes down to how am I going to work? How am I going to make money?
Yeah.
And then even a lot of the areas, we'll just go remote. And then a lot of really rural areas don't have good, reliable internet to go remote from.
No, they don't. And then you have these other problems that you have various phases of housing. So Plainville's a really good example.
Plainville, I love it.
You have a section of housing that's still up, that was not intended to be as old as it is, but it was designed basically as temporary housing for oil workers during the oil boom in the 80s.
We have a whole neighborhood like that in Wichita for aircraft.
Then you have a neighborhood that was all, brick buildings and all really nice because you had 2 or 3 developers that were building in the 50s and the 60s. Then you have these other neighborhoods that were built in the kind of some newer housing in the 80s or early 90s, and they were renovated. And then you have a few houses that are just now getting renovated because they figured out what the programs are.
Yeah.
And that's, all of that's great, but it also goes to the unique character of our town and how we have to take care of it. If you don't have a city hall that's not communicating with your state representative and your state representative is not communicating with them and saying, here's a list of programs that you can take care of, and here's what you should be promoting to your population.
That's what Sherry Kershaw was saying the
other
day. Is
people don't know what they are.
They send you an email at the end of the year and tell you what happened that session.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about anything going along the way. You don't hear about opportunities to talk. You don't hear about different programs. There's so many different programs and money out there on the table to help people that's just sitting where's this money? It's been allocated to these programs, but nobody they're not advertising the programs.
Absolutely. And then sometimes they do, but it only goes to for example, Northwest Development and Planning. So it's a quasi-governmental commission. There's 4 of them in the state of Kansas. They're done by regions, but they are basically designed to help you do your development projects, right? And help you acquire money or whatever have you. A lot of people don't even know that they exist.
I never heard of them.
Northwest Development and Planning has been around since the 70s. They do housing and they do other random things, including working with and having board members all made up of your county and of your cities.
Yeah.
So they serve a bazillion different organizations, but most people don't even hear about them until you're elected to your city council.
Yeah.
That's not only is that a problem, but then you have this learning curve as a city council person of what do they do, how understaffed are they, can they provide the resources
I think,
that
the
we need
educational
for environmental
barrier,
review.
the educational barrier and what feels like some sort of secrecy of the process makes it cumbersome for people to even think about running, because they know they have to spend a year just getting an education and all this stuff, and procedural things, and because they're not doing a good job of educating the public exactly how it works.
And I think that's why people don't want to be engaged in politics right now, because we think of legitimacy as being part of a process. Well, it went through the process, so it must be legitimate, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, no, that's not. The process is designed actually to work against that, right? I think a lot of people are get frustrated because they're like, okay, I don't understand if this is the right thing to do. Why aren't people just doing it? And agree with that, wholeheartedly. Where things get gummed up is when you have your special interests and you have your major corporations and you have these groups of people who don't want you to do well because they want you to be an impoverished labor source so that you're forced to be there. It's expensive to move, right? So, you might have to put in $10,000, $20,000 up front in order to be able to move from Plainville, Kansas to a Wichita or an Oklahoma City or in Denver or, wherever,
Yeah.
And if you don't have that money or your family doesn't have that money to support you, got to take out a loan. Well, now you're in debt to a bank. You create these cycles of poverty where then you have to work longer and you have to defer a retirement. And then you have to keep getting that paycheck, or you retire, you get your retirement benefits, and then you got to take up another job. At what point do you stop being exploited for your labor? Right?
When do we get to rest?
Systematically, when do you get to rest? When do you get to go on vacation?
Enjoy life.
I've never been on a real vacation.
I've only been on, when my kids were little, we went on
life.
some family vacations because I wanted to make sure my kids had memories, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't every year even. There was a few really good memorable vacations. But we never went on vacations when I was a kid. We went and visited my grandparents in Wichita when we lived in Texas. But I've never been on an adult vacation where I just go sit on a beach somewhere. Never.
No,
my mom's never done it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know.
I've been,
none of my family has done that.
Yeah. I've been to Canada to move my uncle back here, actually, because he retired. COVID and the shutdown in Canada was way worse than the United States, and he's older. He's almost 83, so it's we got to go out there and help him out, bring him back, bring him closer to family, because he's not doing the same things that he used to be able to do at that, when you get that age. And that's normal, natural, and that's what families should do. But that also means I'm taking time off of work.
Yeah.
That means I'm not getting that paycheck while I'm out there.
Living?
Well, what I was doing contract work for grants and other stuff and technical writing. I did that for the last 5 years. And then when Doge came around, because I was working with a bunch of organizations or people who wanted to apply for things, and I would do all their technical writing for them. And basically, Doge came around, then all of a sudden that stopped. Things that my clients were supposed to get so that they could pay me, or they were working to get up the cash if they couldn't pull it out of the loan or grant that I was trying to get for them, they couldn't pay me anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, I did bookkeeping for small businesses, and it's the same situation. It's they have all these great ideas, and I really want to help them, but they don't have any money.
Yeah. And building that up, building a reputation, getting the advertising out there, that's really hard, and it's very time consuming, and it's really hard to get sometimes people to listen to you about what you can get or whatnot. And so I was having a beer at my local bar, it's the Handlebar Eatery and Tavern, and I was talking to my friends, they're the owners up there, and they're just like, come work here for a little bit. I was like, okay. So that's what I've been doing for the last year. I'll occasionally apply for a loan for someone that I know or something if I know it's not going to eat up most of my time. And then I was like, okay, this is going to be stable for a little bit. I'll make some money here, be able to help pay whatever bills I have and stuff. And then I'm going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's law school, maybe that's something else. But then I was at a legislative coffee session, and Ken said his stuff to me, and I was just like, I can do this better than you.
This is exactly the reason I'm interviewing people too, is because I feel like people are going to be out there, they're going to see you running, and they're going to have one or two reactions. Both are going to project them into office. They're either going to look at you and go, I can do better than that guy, or they're going to look at you and go, if he can do it, I can do it, right? And so
I hope the latter.
Hopefully the latter. The latter
right?
would be preferred.
What I want to see is people building rural power. I want rural people to have leverage in Topeka, but I also want rural to have leverage in Washington, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things need to be working together, and we need to be thinking about, okay, what are the public resources that we need? I'll give you a good example. We have a public park and a public pool in Plainville, right?
Yeah.
We recently added a splash pad. We went for almost no grant funding for that. Eventually, we did get a grant for it, but it was halfway during the construction process. Splash pad, no one's happy with it. It hasn't been built to spec or something. It doesn't work correctly. When it's windy, water goes all over in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So people look at that and they say, okay, that's basic government waste.
Yeah.
I don't want that waste. I think that's a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
When we have a downtown where most of our buildings aren't occupied,
I'm gonna take a drive through there tomorrow.
Absolutely,
I gotta check out what
Plainville,
is it
Kansas.
the plainest?
Yeah.
This is the reason I came out here to do the interview in person too. Is I have driven through here. I lived in Denver. I've driven through here 100 times, and I stop in Hayes here, and I stay at a hotel or I get gas, and I've never ventured. And then I was like, he's from Plainsville.
Yeah,
check that
Plainville. Yeah, it used to be Paradise Flats back in the day, but now it's Plainville.
It's just plain.
Longville. Yeah.
I mean, is it an accurate description? Is it Plainville? That's like an 80s insult. This is Plainville, man. Let's get out of here.
It is and it isn't, right? I think there's two things that are really unique about it. And there's a lot of incredibly smart people in my mom's generation and right around that generation who, in the 80s, made a lot of money either farming or in the oil industry, and they went on to do amazing things and contribute back to their community. My Uncle Chuck is probably one of the biggest inspirations for that.
Yeah.
He owned a furniture company called Destin Furnier, and that collapsed in the end of 2020 and 2021. And the reasons for that are many. You really have to zoom out and look at the totality of the luxury furniture market and how things are consolidating, things are changing very rapidly.
Everyone's going to like cheap stuff now too.
Yeah. And so the market was shrinking as well. So that became a problem with the way his company basically was set up. But he also knew he was the largest private employer in the area. And so we have this gorgeous building in the center of downtown Plainville that's $8 million. And
that's
it's
some
now,
roots.
And it's now owned by the hospital, and they use it basically for file keeping and for some offices for mental health and storage. And it's really, really sad. You look down the rest of Plainville, it looks like it hasn't been. Some buildings have been restored. My cousin Adam, Chuck's son, just recently restored Letha's, and that's going to be a community kitchen.
His same last name as yours?
No, his is Como. So Comeau.
Yeah.
Comeau. And I think what they've done, what Adam's done is incredible. And he's done that to several other buildings, like Brandt's Meat Market. He owns Brandt's with his wife, Ashley. And we have a location here. We have a location in Lucas. I help them out on the holidays and stuff with whatever they need.
There's a candidate I got to run in 81, which is like south of Wichita.
Yeah.
It's Derby. It's against Carpenter, who's like the second highest in the House.
I gotcha.
And I've known him for like a decade, and he has a little farm, and that's one of the reasons he thinks he can win. He's running as a Democrat is because he's made a lot of connections with people because they buy his meat.
Yeah.
And they know him and his wife and their children from the market.
Yeah. Same thing with the handlebar. Like, I know a lot of people, and we pull from a 90-mile radius.
How do you organize and communicate and is everybody around here on social media, or do you have to actually?
Facebook's
you got to go out.
Facebook's huge, but you got to be really careful with Facebook because you have your keyboard warriors, and everybody thinks they know something. And what I've learned is that I know nothing, and I know everything.
Yes.
Which is to say, I know that there are programs out there, but I don't always know if we can execute.
I think sometimes people in comments are seeing things, but they don't live in the rural area.
Yeah.
And this is one thing that led me to be more interested in the rural area too, is trying to explain to people in California why they should not want us to all die.
Yeah.
Because we go red, right? They were just like on TikTok.
And there are very reasonable reasons, I think, to go red sometimes. So, you can have, I think property taxes right now are a huge problem.
They are. They're
right?
the number one questions I have.
Yeah. Rooks County's property taxes went up something like 25% this last year. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Some of that is due to the algorithms and corporate buying of housing and stuff. People not from the community moving in, which we need that population and all of that. But the other problem is those are like localized taxes. Basically, you can set your mill levy, but the formula for the mill levy is determined by the state.
Yes.
Right? So I think the formula needs to be changed in the short term. We also used to have something called the Local Ad Valorem Tax Relief Program, which the Republicans got rid of in 2003. They stopped funding it, basically.
Yeah.
It was a program from FDR that got started in 1933, basically. And it subsidized counties for lowering their mill levies. So if a county needed X to operate and set their mill levies at X to create that revenue, the state would come in and say, hey, lower your mill levies and we will make up the rest of that revenue up to X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
So that's what made rural affordable for a very long time. Republicans started calling that a slush fund. I have no idea why that's a slush fund. That's returning your tax dollars back to your rural community, right?
That's my thing is, Brownback came in and did all these cuts. They did all these cuts to programs, but anytime they do these cuts, I never see our taxes go down. They always go up. So if they've cut services, where is the money they're saving that we're supposed to be getting back?
So there's a philosophical question that's buried underneath that question that answers your question that we need to talk about. So we need to talk about neoliberalism here and what that is. Okay, so neoliberalism is an economic philosophy. All right. It gets started by Friedrich von Hayek and then turns into Milton Friedman, all these people that are associated with the Kochs and then conservative circles. Basically what it says is the family is the fundamental economic unit of society, that economics is a better way of redistributing resources than democracy is. So you need to keep the state small and the state should only do protective stuff. And then if you work and you have competition, all the things are there, and the state doesn't interfere with the market will take care of everything else. So the ideal political situation that they want you to be in is to be a consumer in Walmart, choosing between two different things. Let's say that's 2 spatulas, right? You get to judge the quality, and the best use of political agency is judging whether or not one spatula is as equal quality as the other one, and then going and choosing and buying which one depending on their price, right? Now that is an extremely reductive view of an individual, but that also shows that they want you to be acting as a private individual, only buying from private companies and only doing private things. If they could privatize your roads and make you pay a tax to a private company, they would. And that's because you are not exempt from the rules. Only the people who are at the tippy top are exempt from the rules, right? They want, they think your Kochs and everybody else, all these billionaires, think that they are exempt from public things because they think taxes are a punishment. Taxes are not a punishment, especially federal taxes. Like your federal taxes are the thing that create demand for your currency.
Taxes why we have the building we're sitting in right now.
Yeah.
And
taxes fund the public library.
The other day I got
things.
They said the taxes on our car came, and they do it different in Shawnee County than Cedric County, and they send you out a bill. It's not just part of your tax, and it is like $248 versus $40 in Cedric County. But they have the most amazing library. I don't know if you've been in there, but I interviewed a guy that's running for governor in there. It is so cool and beautiful, and I was like, okay, well, and that's the trade-off. In Topeka, they clean my streets once a week. They don't do that in Wichita.
Right.
They remove everybody was upset that they didn't remove the snow from the side streets. And I'm like, they do that here? And so that's why my car property taxes are higher.
And you look at that, like take that. We're in the Hayes Public Library right now, and I'm looking out the window. You probably can't see this on camera, but there's a puzzle group that's meeting over in the corner.
It's beautiful.
You get in public libraries community, right? And these billionaires want to be exempt from that. They want to get all their yes men, and they want to create their own communities that are just them. And then you get your private islands, and you get your Epstein problems. Like, this is not okay.
Because we're just sheep, cattle to be used.
Exactly. And that's what our labor resource is. It sucks that they have
we're
to
just
pay
numbers
us
on a
so much.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
We're numbers on a spreadsheet. I was in HR for like 5 years, and I thought going into HR that I would be like the advocate for the workers. And no, HR is about protecting the company against lawsuits. So that opened my eyes to a lot of how just even like a smaller company, this wasn't a big corporation, really just looks at a spreadsheet to decide who to fire. And
here's the crazy thing. So I have a Baptist minister that lives across the street from me. He's a really great guy. I love talking to him. You know, I wave at him every single time. Now, I was raised Catholic. I don't particularly attend church or anything anymore. We can personally go into that background at some other point in time.
I don't care.
But
I would like to not know anybody that's running for office or at the state house's religion. Because they just,
I guess my point, I think, is that we agree on a lot of different stuff, right?
Yes.
But that's also because we share a public road right in between our houses that when we go out to mow, forces us to have a little bit of a gap and then say, oh, hi. And then we jump across the street, and then we start talking. You know, you can do that in a rural community. It's harder to do that in a subdivision or in an urban area because there's all these things that are pulling you in different directions, right?
Well, and it's just not. When they're setting up big cities, it's just not being set up in a cohesive way to build a community within there. They're not giving them a green spaces. They're not giving them
it's not the same thing.
To be and build community like your library that's free. That's the main thing. In a city, it costs money to build community.
Yeah, well, and it does too in rural spaces, right? It just does that differently. So I think one of the things we have to do is think about a permanent fund for the state that your local communities can buy into. One of the ways you could do that is using oil revenue. And then you could wean yourself off.
What do you think about marijuana legalization?
I love that. I would love for some of that
revenue to go. How do the rural people feel about marijuana? Because it'd be grown out here.
Mixed. I think mixed, right? So
or hemp could even be grown. It doesn't have to be the kind of issue.
All that stuff is natural out here, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that, first of all, I'm all for marijuana legalization because I think it creates a new source of revenue, right?
Yes.
And I don't think that it's a gateway drug. There's no...
Well, the gateway that comes with marijuana, right, is when you're going to a drug dealer's house and then you just want marijuana, but they have pills and coke, and you're like, hey, can I get some of those? And that's how it's a gateway, but if it's
That's how it was described in the 80s.
If it's in a store, you don't have that.
So that's right?
Yeah.
I agree with the logic that you're using there.
Yeah.
The problem is that scenario very rarely, if anything, has happened, and there's lots of really good research on that.
Yeah.
The stuff that we were saying about being a gateway drug back in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid, most of that stuff is incorrect.
They're basically saying you'll get high and you won't be satisfied with that anymore.
Yeah,
so you'll smoke crack or something. And I'm just if anything, alcohol is the gateway drug. The first time I smoked weed, I was in 8th grade and I was drunk. So it's
Yeah, I mean, it's not for me. Same thing with drinking. I had my drinking phase in my 20s because I was in college and in grad school and all that stuff, and that's what you do on the weekend. But we always made sure that we did that safe, that we got home, that we weren't going crazy.
Yeah, I've never been a big partier.
Yeah,
I like to be home alone. I'm a homebody.
I'm not that, but. With marijuana, you don't have people going around and getting into violent fights the same way you do with drunk people.
Well, the thing is if there are negative ramifications of it, at this point we are surrounded by 3 legalized states.
Yep.
So if there are negative ramifications, we are getting them without any of the funding.
Yep.
So
absolutely, and
people are just popping right over.
Yeah. And I think this creates other questions about how we need to create systems. So one of the things that we don't have in rural Kansas is really good mental health systems, right? We need to be thinking about developing a really solid mental health system. We need to be thinking about
this is another thing that got me interested in rural
Yeah.
When the farmers were all killing themselves,
Yeah.
there was this. I saw a ProPublica thing where they were talking
Our
to people that work
suicide
at
rates,
auctions.
Yeah.
And they said that tractor came from a suicide, that
Yeah.
tractor came from a suicide. There were 5 suicides right there in front of us in that one little community.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh.
It's huge. I had
bad.
2 friends last year pass away due to suicide, one of whom lived in the county. We have the number one group that's using our suicide hotline, and I only know this anecdotally. I don't have any proof to show this, but it seems to be people working on farms because that's the thing
They're
that
isolated.
everyone tells
They're stressed out about money.
Yeah, and farmers are getting hit at both sides.
They're
right?
getting hit from
so you have
5 different ways I found.
You have your input costs, but then you also have your output costs, and all those things just work against you, the producer, and that's because we've consolidated into these giant corporations that control the price for everything. And so if you want to be independent of those, you can't be, and scale. And then if you try to scale, you are working your ass off, and that is going to be a very, very lonely spot.
I mean, they've done all sorts of things,
and
like
they're coming for your land,
making seeds that only produce fruit
Yeah.
or whatever that doesn't produce more seeds, so you have to go to them to get the source of seeds and things like that. They're just so nefarious.
Yeah.
And people just don't know. They don't know what it's like to be out here. They have their ideas or whatever, but they don't know what it's like to actually live out in a rural area, or they're not out here talking to the people and getting to know them. And you definitely, like, it feels like some of the people running are having to knock on doors and really get in their communities now. But I feel like you already are pretty embedded.
I hope I
You know
am.
a lot of stuff about what's going on in your local community.
I'm a boomerang, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I also have a certain training that helps me do all those things, right? Like, I come from a background of organizing social movements and stuff, or at least researching them. So I know where to look for this stuff. When Smithfield tried to come and create a pork plant, and it was specialized. It was only supposed to be harvesting semen for their pigs in order to go to a different location and breed different pigs to create a particular type of pork.
So the whole facility is was going to be dedicated to that.
Semen harvest.
Semen harvesting.
And Smithfield has a history of proposing one thing and then doing another. And so we saw the water application that they had bought some land, but it's industrial. We were really lucky in the state of Kansas that our county ultimately has the say, yes or nay, over something like that. So we worked with local property owners. I was part of this discussion. There was my cousin, who is also an attorney, who owns a local meat shop and several downtown businesses and stuff. We're concerned about how this would affect our community, how this would affect our hospital, because this is an open sewage pit. So, and it's just 2 miles from our hospital, so you get a really hard eastbound wind that could impact our ER. All these concerns that were unable to be met during the public presentation that Smithfield brought. And then on top of it, we didn't know how they were going to get their water because there's no water on that land. Smithfield eventually chose to keep the land but abandon the project. We felt that we were successful because community opposition was cited as one of the reasons, and the lack of water was cited as the second reason. Now, the problem with your Smithfields is that they can start expanding, right? They stay. They will change the facility, and once they're there, now it's going to be this packing plant. Now it's going to be this other thing.
That's some of the questions that I have, because you have these developers, or you have companies, private companies, that come in and promise you jobs. They promise all this revenue, and then they don't deliver on it. So, like, there has to be some way for us to hold these people accountable when they do not. What I see is a contract. You have a contract. This contract says that we will give you these breaks and do this and this for you, and you will bring these benefits to our community. And if you do not bring the benefits and meet your goals that you say you can meet, then you have to pay us this much money back, or there's got to be some sort of way of holding, and then you have to do it. Because they can have those things in contracts.
Well,
but if nobody pushes it.
That's the biggest problem, right? You have to have all 3 branches of government working for you and having the public interest at heart. The biggest problem right now is that at the legislative level, and I mean this both at the state, at the county, at the local level, and at the federal level, parties don't always have that right at heart, or they are neoliberal, in which case they think that the business interests are the best interests.
Yes.
And I do not think that the business interests are the best interests, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think you need to develop small business. I do think that you need to create competition, but I do not think that the Coke network has the best interests of people. I do not think that the Farm Bureau, which is actually an insurance company, always has your best interest.
No.
Do they provide good quality insurance for some farmers? Absolutely. Do I think they provide some good advice and some good networking and all those things? Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, they're about making money off of those people or not paying out to them.
Yes.
That's their goal.
They lobby in Washington for things that are contrary to the small farmer. They lobby really for these big agro businesses.
Exactly. Yes.
And there's a point where you got to break that up. There's a point where that's not in your best interest anymore. And we got to start having those conversations because then you can move forward.
If they have complete control of our food supply, they have complete control of everything.
Yeah.
They have complete control of our government because they can just wield that over a small community like you guys, or send 200 people in to
they say,
get their interests
we're gonna create 17, then it goes to 12, then it goes to 20, then it goes to 200 jobs for a community like Plainville. That's huge, right? But then what they say, we're only going to pay $12 an hour. That's not enough to make rent. So where are those people going to be housed?
This is another thing I want to talk about was minimum wage, like raising minimum wage, because a lot of the arguments that I hear about from people in the city about the rural areas is that if we raise minimum wage to 15, it's going to shut down all these mom and pop stores, and all these people that live out in the country in the rural areas won't be able to sustain it and pay it. And I'm like, but the people there need a living wage.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be able. If your business cannot provide a living wage, that means it doesn't get to expand to have employees.
So you have business model conflicts is basically what this comes down to.
It's a failed business model.
Do you want to do the work of creating a business model that will allow for minimum wage or not? So for small businesses, that could be a problem. It depends which small business you're in. I would use the one that I'm in, right? So I'm working as a waiter at my local bar, right? I know quite a bit of people. So when I talk with the owners and stuff, and we've had this discussion, would it be better for them to just pay $30,000 to each employee as a salary, as opposed to being a tipped wage? Now, there's some variance. So for some people who don't perform as well or don't get as many hours, they're going to make a little bit more. For some people who get more hours but also perform a little bit better, they're going to get a little bit less. But would that change, there's some trade-offs there. Would that change in terms of schedule predictability? Would you get PTO? Would you be able to afford insurance that way? There's all these things that you have to think about. Now, you have to think about your revenue model. If you're in a small community and you can only make, let's say, $1 million a year at your small restaurant, you've got to balance being able to go salaried versus tipped against how much revenue you're bringing in and your business loan. Because there's only so many people and from so much distance that you can pull in on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So if it's not possible for a small independent restaurant to do something like that, one risk that you're taking in substantially raising the minimum wage at the federal level or at the state level is that you create the conditions for more franchises because those get subsidized by your big corporation, right? So that's one risk. I'm not saying that would necessarily happen. There's a question of what can the state or the federal government do to mitigate that risk? And we're not having that debate at all. That's the debate I want to have because I think you have to have a livable wage, right? So, okay, let's increase the minimum wage. I also think, personally, I would love to get rid of tipped wages.
There is a brewery in Wichita where they pay everyone like $18, $19, $20 an hour. They love working there. And they actually get, I think, more business from other places because people know they can come in there and just pay for their drink and not have to worry about having an extra dollar or two.
And I've had some people that come in and get a little too schlockered because they don't know what they're doing. And they don't leave you tip.
They just leave a whole card behind them.
I've had people run up, $500 worth of food and drinks and then not tip at the end of the day. And that really
I was a
sucks.
waiter. I waited tables for a decade before I did some education and stuff and started getting into the business field. But it's And I have kids that wait tables.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes back to, okay, so what are you willing to do in order to make a business model financially feasible for small people? Mm-hmm. And we're not doing that anymore. You do this pull yourself up by the bootstrap stuff. Well, I don't know if you've ever actually tried doing that, but that's really, really hard to do.
Yeah, I heard that it was that they, like, it was a joke. It was like, because you can't do it. Actually, we're missing the point.
During the Dust Bowl, Fort Hays' president at the time, I believe that was Garrett, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong about which president it was, but he made this joke about the students there not being able to pull themselves up by the bootstraps because they were all trying.
Yeah.
And he became known for that in the school's history because he showed that you can't do things without your community and other people around you and your family.
Yeah.
Right?
You have to have I call it a tribe, but you have to, and you have to worry. I think that we can finish up here, but I think what happened for me is I was so overwhelmed. I wanted to say this earlier. I was so overwhelmed by what was happening. And the federal government can't hear me with my protest sign. But the city council can hear me when I go in there. And they all know my name. The mayor of Wichita knows my name. She'd know my face if I was walking down the street, right? She'd probably cross it. But I'm just saying, like, they can hear you at the local level. They can hear you at the county level. Yeah. And so I was like, this is too much. What's going on up here is too much. And there's not really anything because it would happen. I'd be like, what can I do about it, right? Yeah. But then I started looking, you just look at your surroundings. This is like something they told me in therapy if I'm getting stressed out, you just focus on your surroundings. Yeah. So that's what I did. I just focused on Wichita where I was living at the time. And then I kind of got that under my head and I was like, well, I can focus on the state. And then my daughter moved to Topeka. So I moved to Topeka and I was like, well, now I can focus on the state. Yeah. And so, if you just focus on your local, whatever, pick one. If it's the school board you care about, just focus on the school board. If it's the city council you care about, just focus on that. And just pick something that really means something new that's going to motivate you to care. Yeah. There's a lady in Wichita that her whole thing is the animal shelter. Yeah. And there's nefarious things going on over there, but that's her thing. It's all about the animals. And so there's ways that people can make a difference that are just like micro, like they're smaller. It's easier to take a bite out of the political process at the local level. Even if you're in a city the size of Wichita.
Well, and that teaches you how things scale. And because all these governments here that you have, each taxing district is basically a Russian nesting doll. So you have the federal government being the biggest one, it's going to tax you. Then you have your state, that's going to tax you. Then you have your county, that's going to tax you. Then you have your hospital district, you have your
CIDs
school district,
for special things,
and all of that. And so all of those are just little nesting dolls, right? That structure can cause different kinds of problems, and we're seeing that with the property tax problem right now. One of the ways that we can think about that is, okay, if our currency comes from the federal government and the state is a currency user, then what can the state be doing differently to raise revenues that doesn't require us to pay taxes to them? And a permanent fund is a really good idea. Norway does this. Yeah. There's a couple counties in the United States. I want to say there's it's not a statewide fund, but it's like a county-wide fund. I want to say it was like in South Dakota or something. Don't quote me on where that's at, but I have notes on it. But basically, a lawsuit against a coal mine there made it possible for that county to invest its natural resource money into a permanent fund and pays back a predictable distribution to that county. So they can afford public things now because it's properly invested. It's a new revenue source that doesn't require taxing.
Yeah.
So
they can do it there.
Yeah, exactly. If they can do it there, why can't we do it at the statewide level? If they can do it in Norway, which makes sense, they're part of the EU and all of that. Again, makes sense. They can make more money. Then I think that provides us with more democratic accountability because we put people on a permanent fund board or whatnot, make sure they're elected, and then make sure that our local communities can invest in that thing. If the state provides the initial fund, the state can draw something down. Why can't all these other little nesting dolls be able to draw something down? It's not going to eliminate our taxes entirely, but it's something that can lower.
I wouldn't mind paying all the taxes if I was getting health care and I didn't have to worry about college education and I was getting something back for them. But like I said, they cut and then we don't get anything. What are we paying for? Just give me my money and let me put it all invested in the community. And so, which is kind of a libertarian view.
Well, and it goes back to that individualism, right? Like,
Yeah.
the problem is that we can't live as individuals, you know? Then we just get super isolated and depressed and...
Well, yeah,
bad
we
things
have the
happen.
breakdown, like the child care issue. We used to have, you would have other generations helping with the younger generations. And I live with my daughter and help take care of my grandsons. So we're kind of keeping that in our family. But that is, they want us isolated. They want us separate because it's easier for us to, they make more money if we have two houses and then we have two things we're buying stuff for. So they've done that on purpose to separate the structure of the family that gives us the layers of protection when we lose our job, that help us take care of our kids. And because it's too much for one, like even a mom and a dad to take care of two kids, whether they're, like my grandsons are autistic, but even average children, it's a lot. And you're supposed to have aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents and all these other people around to help you, and we're all just so separated now.
Yeah, completely. And I think
on purpose.
I very much feel that this is purposeful. And then you have all these activities and things that keep you from being able to see your family and be with other people and build friendships and appropriate social connections, right? And you can never ever have a moment where you're not working. And that's rough, especially out here, you know. Like you open a new small business, if you don't have revenue or savings or inherited wealth in order to be able to do that and take a hit for a few years, you're not going to be viable out here. Like that's just the way it's going to be. So the question is how do you scale and how do you make time then for your kids? How do you make time for yourself so that you can recover once?
Or just even to have a small farm.
Yeah.
It's just 24/7 work.
Yeah.